Okay, hi everybody. Welcome back to the home of Crybaby Performance, where we try and they cry. We've done a lot today. We've got a few more things to cover. We are on to the piston rings, crank, connecting rod, and that sort of thing. Sorry for the breaks. It takes us a little while to find our bearings in the manual. And I'm going to pick on the manual a little bit because with an index, we could really find this stuff a lot easier with some revision dates, who wrote it, who to contact, phone numbers. I mean, the document, of course, you know, the new stuff's in red, but as far as documents go, this thing's jumbled up, the sections jump all over the place, an index would be really nice. So without further delay, James, take it away. Tell them what we're working on next. Okay, we're going to get the flywheel off, and then Jake, you want to take the gearbox off? Again, I always put the screwdriver behind the flywheel. You can't see it, and it's usually a couple whacks. Took one there to get the flywheel off. The gearbox got oil in it? Gearbox got oil in it? I hope not. It's got a little. Our bench is only so big. Let me see that oil pan, because the residue will. What, you need a shorter one? No, I always. We already had an oil Valdez here that we cleaned up once. But I like to slip the pan under the gearbox to catch whatever comes out. Okay, so this is a 6-to-1 gearbox. Is it 6-to-1 or 4-to-1? 6, I believe. I don't know. Okay, so with the piston at top dead center, I always notice where this hole location is. I think somebody's been in here anyway, but this usually lines up about right like that. And I always look at it as, the piston's at the top and that lines up. I don't think you can put this on wrong, but it will go on in any position. You know, these holes are obviously from Honda to balance the gear. Now, on an inspection on the Sun gear, if you look at it, somebody could lighten this thing up. I've seen ones online with more holes drilled in them, but again, I don't think that's really going to help you, because in momentum racing, you want as much weight swinging out there as you can get. So the other thing I do like, though, and I mentioned it earlier, is the bolt in the end of the Sun gear with a bigger washer to hold the gear hub on, so that if that gear hub ever comes loose, it can't make its way off the gear. So I don't see anything in there that's really a big deal. Now we're going to take the other side off. They say in the rules that, I think, is anybody looking it up, that you can have 2 gaskets on there? Yes, it says maximum of 2 gaskets may be used between gearbox halves. So between the gearbox halves, you can put 2 gaskets. Why would you want to? Well, I guess if the Sun gear, hold on a second, if the Sun gear was on there, and now we have the gasket, if it was pinching it, let's say the end play, you wanted more, and it's got plenty of end play, so I can't imagine you'd want to put 2 gaskets on there. more end play is not going to give you anything more because the gear is so wide here and so wide here. I just don't see end play doing anything. But maybe they're concerned about it leaking. I've never had one leak. Again, Honda machining is pretty thorough. Now you got to pay attention to these bolts because the ones that hold the gear case on are shorter than the ones that hold the two halves together. Again, your engine builder might be putting this all back together. Anyway, just slap this all back together. I like to keep it all back together. And then take it away. Okay, now we're on to the crankcase. Which is holding the whole engine together. Now, the crankcase to the block, the rules state you can only run one gasket. Maximum thickness of 25 thousandths. Only one crankcase cover gasket may be used. Bummer, it'd be nice if it was 2 or 3. 2 gaskets there could help you get a little. Now let's just see. This engine turns over pretty hard. Okay, and there's really no side to side with this crank in these halves. So you're robbing horsepower by this thing being this tight. I mean, yeah, I can move it up and down, but it'd be nice if I could rotate it with my 3 fingers, which I can't do. But if you put 2 gaskets on there, that would free it up. Or if you clearance the crank, like they say in that 340 number. Grab me a crank so I can show. Okay, take the rest of these bolts out, please. 160 crank. I forget what page that's called out on. So with the crank in the engine, you know, right now it's between the halves pretty tight, and the rule book gives you 27. This one's at 344, which this one probably moves in the engine side to side a little bit better than the one that's in there, but we'll see when we get it out. 3.340 minimum. Now we're into the all oil. Now I don't like to pry these cases apart. And I like to try and save as many gaskets as we can because, you know, why pay money for gaskets? It's going to go back together just fine. It's not like the gasket has sealer on it, it's pretty loose. I'll reuse a gasket as many times as I have to. Maybe that's just the cheapskate in me, but, you know, why spend money when you don't have to? Okay, so not much oil left in the block. Now I want to touch on something that's in the manual new for this year. There's a hole between these 2 lifters. Since our camera is stationary, I'll show you with a pen right there, and we have another block. And that hole between the lifters, can you see it? Now is a non-tech item. So I would recommend that you open that hole up so that it doesn't trap oil in the top end of the engine. The Briggs does, that whole area is cut out between the two lifters. On the Honda, it has that hole. This one has been opened up a little bit, and the one in that engine had been opened up a little bit. The factory one's really small. So now we're ready to take the crank out of it. Now the lifters, here, take this away, please. When we take the crank out, the camshaft out, the lifters are going to fall. But I want to show you something before that, okay? Now see this little dot on the camshaft right there? There's another dot on the crankshaft. And when you put these engines back together, to get it internally timed correctly to itself, those two dots have to line up. And the piston will be at top dead center. So right there, those two marks line up and the piston's at top dead center. Now, if you have that off one tooth, this engine is not going to run. You'll be pushing it around the track 5 times, scratching your head. It's not going to run. And if you're off one tooth the other way, it's not going to run. So you have to be confident enough to know that those two marks line up. It's just like a big car. A big car has those timing marks on it as well. And my 70 Cutlass, the chain drove those two, and the chain jumped one tooth and the car wouldn't start, and I scratched my head for a week when I was 17 trying to figure out what happened. Okay, so now the lifters are going to fall out of the bore, and I don't keep track of them. It don't matter. They're, you know, you're going to reset valve lash. Now I'm just looking at the camshaft. There's nothing really to see. I mean, to really get measurements, you have to do it like we did it. But now, let's say that you didn't want to go through the whole cam timing thing, and you're like, I'm just going to check cams today, and you rip the gearbox off, and you looked at the cam, okay? You can do a quick measurement. Somebody get the cam page. From the peak to the heel of the cam, is 1.086. I think the measurement's 1.090. Again, an index in the book would help, but we don't have that.
25, page 25.
Page 25. 1.0, and with the caliper, you got to keep rotating it until it kind of settles.
1.079 to 1.093.
Okay, this cam's pretty darn nice because it's 1.925, which is a half a thou under the legal limit. But this side is 1.087. But that would be a quickie check. If somebody had a performance cam in there, this lobe would be a lot higher and it would be flattened off, and you'd know it, you know, pretty quickly. Now for the lifters, you need that scale again. The lifters, there's not much you're going to do. A lighter lifter might help you on the valve train. The length of the lifter is 1.91. When we go to the lifter section, what do we got? Looking for that page number. Here we go, tap it's right here. What page number? 25, page 25, tap it's. Okay, length. You want the length? It's a red number, so it must have changed. 1.174 minimum. Okay, so let's talk about that minimum number. This is 1.191. They're giving us 1.17 what? 4. So that's 74 from 91. Not good at math. Somebody do it quick. Nobody. Nobody's good at math.
Oh, I didn't.
17. Okay, I trust him. 17. So that's 17 thousandths. Okay. The only way this would be short is on this face because it's wearing off, but I never seen it short. What's the diameter? Minimum 0.935. Okay, and this is 937. So there's nothing to be gained 2 thousandths on that, but there's a little bit to be gained on the overall length. Now they give us a minimum weight. What's the minimum weight? 16 grams. And we're 18 grams. So I've often wondered, how do we get down to 16 grams? Because this is a valve train part, I want to be down to 16. But you really can't, you're not going to get there. I'm telling you. And then they give us a diameter for it here, which is 313. I think it's
312 minimum.
312 minimum. So you're not going to get anything here. The only place you could get it is on the face, on the total length of it. But again, you know, give us these numbers and tell us, don't cut it, don't touch it, don't even look at it. So we'll get this length real quick. 1.190, so that's about 15 thousandths you could get off of there. But it ain't going to lighten it up 2 grams. 2 grams is, you know, that's a little bit of weight. Let's show everybody what 2 grams is because it's a razor blade. Got a nut. That razor blade was 1.8. This is almost. Okay. This bolt is 3 grams, but to take 3 grams off of this thing, I mean, that's a lot. So you're probably not going to get that ever down to 16. The razor blade's 1.8 grams. You know, it's not a lot of weight. Probably not worth even messing with. Okay, so now inside the block we have the rod and the piston. This little thing right here is called an oil dipper. So when the crank spins, it hits the oil and splashes it into the engine. You know, and you can imagine at 5,500 RPM, this thing whipping around in there. I mean, the oil is just whipping around there in a frenzy, you know. So I've had these busted off at the base and I've had them busted off here. I don't know if it just spun too many RPM or the oil was too thick, but we like to run a thin weight. The Red Thor oil is what we like to run, and 13 ounces. Okay, so now we're going to get the rod out of it, and that's always fun too because it never matches the weights stated. Okay, here, Jake. While he's doing that, I'm going to look for that. Okay, we're now on page 26 of the manual for people following along in the manual. Removing connecting rod and piston. Triangle or boss on top of the piston must point towards push rods. Which there is no triangle boss, so what does it say? Where are you at? Page 26. The triangle or boss on the top of the piston must point towards push rods. So this little hump is what they're calling the boss. It must point towards the push rods to have the piston in the engine correctly. Piston must be Honda factory supplied. 120 UT3, standard size piston. No modifications of any kind will be permitted. Oversized pistons will not be permitted. So that's another good one. The bore of this, I think they give you 6 thousandths on the bore to clean up the bore, which is not a lot of material. Okay, so now we have the piston out. And all 3 rings must be used. Let's talk about now this is we're doing tech, but I want to show you stuff too. You know, that's a nice looking cap there. And that's a nice looking rod. Now we could mic those together, and I'm betting you it's going to be like 3.5 clearance to the crank, because that's really nice. I have no problem putting that back together just the way that is. And I'm telling you, the lower ends of these engines last forever. It's really more valve maintenance than anything else. So now let's take the ring off of the piston. Top ring, the chrome compression ring must be installed with N or T on the rail up. Okay, so there's an N or a T on this rail. Oh, this says R1. Is there an R1? No, N or T. No N or T. That little marking wears off the ring because it's just barely engraved in there. But as you can see, there's a chamfer in the ring, and the chamfer has to face up. Okay, and then they give us, are you on the ring? They give us a width of the ring. That's 37.5. Top ring, 0.036 minimum. Okay, so that's good. And then they give us a width. Do they give us a width of the ring here like that? They might not. No. Okay. And then there's no end gap. They don't even talk about an end gap on the ring. I like to just look at it because you could drive a bus through the end gap usually. And they don't specify it, which they really should specify the end gap. I mean, they're giving you a bore. Looks pretty small. They're giving you a bore, and they're giving you a maximum number on the bore, which is 6 thousandths. And then they're telling you to use the factory ring, but they're not giving you a ring end gap. 11 went in there pretty easy. Let's go to, usually it's around 20. 15 went in there pretty easy. Let's go to 17. 17's pretty tight. Okay, so 17, like I said, you could drive a school bus through that gap. Usually in most Chevy, small block Chevys, the ring gap is 11 thousandths. Well, we're already at 17, but they don't call it a ring gap, so it doesn't really matter. That's a non-issue. But when you hear the air going through the engine and coming out the crankcase, you know why now. And we'll look at the second ring. Minimum thickness 0.036, just like the top ring. And it's 0.36, it's already there. And the ring you could see has a little bit of wear on it, but not much. And then when you do put this back together, you want to stagger these gaps like that in the engine. Don't put them all together like this, because then you'll really get some blow by. And then the oil ring, that's the top ring, which is the same as the bottom ring. 0.075 minimum. What? 0.075 minimum. For what? It says 3-piece lower ring. Well, this one's measuring 15 thousandths.
Probably the three of them together.
Yeah, probably the three of them together. 75 is pretty big. Right. And then this is your oil collector, for a better term. Do they give you a, they give you a length of this. If you roll it out on the bench and measure it, they give you a length. They used to give you a length. Is there a length in there? No. Oil ring? No? Nope, it just says oil ring, 3-piece lower ring, 0.75. Okay. So that's all good. Now we're going to get into some weights. What do we got for a piston weight? Can you give me that pick over there so I can get this apart? Piston weight, 95 grams minimum. I'm betting it's going to be 100. Total piston weight with rings, pin, and clips, 130 grams minimum. Total piston weight with rings, pin, clips, complete with rod and bolts, 250 grams minimum. I know this, I just heard it hit. If not, I got another one. I hate taking these little clips out because they're kind of pressed in there. And he found it, good eyes. And he found it, that's awesome. I would have never found it. I have extras because that happens, but maybe I should. No, this is, the pin in this is really tight. Pair of pliers, I don't really, you know, for tech it's fine, but these pliers maybe. Yeah, that does seem tight if you have to force it that much. That's tight in here, you know. But it's loose in the rod. It's nice and loose in the rod. I guess that's all that matters. But I'd like it to be loose in the piston as well. Okay, so we have a rod and bolts, right? For weight. Rings, pin, and clips. Rod and bolts. Okay, piston. Let's see, piston weight 95 grams minimum. What does it say is included in that weight? Because it ain't a bare. No, that's it. That's it. The new book says piston weight 95 grams minimum. And then the next one is piston weight with rings, pin, and clips. Okay, so piston weight right now is 97. What's our minimum? 95 grams minimum. Okay, you're never going to get there. I still have one clip in. Which I mean, this is getting pretty fussy at this point. That little clip is worth. Didn't even pick it up. Which I can't believe.
You said 95 minimum, right?
Yeah, you're almost 5 hours in it. If they're gone this far and it's this fussy.
Okay, so the piston's 97, and what's our minimum? 95. 95, so they're giving you 2 grams. There's nothing to be had in here. Okay, it's the right piston, it's got the dimple, the relief for the spark plug. There's nothing to be had there. Okay, now they're giving you rod and piston weight with rings, pin, and clips. Piston. Rings. And clips. 130 minimum. What? What do we mean? Oh, pin. Pin. 132. So 2 grams. Again, you're not getting anything out of that. Okay, wait. Now total piston weight, rings, clips, and rod and bolts. 250. Okay, and you're at 253.
Right.
You know, even if you left one bolt out, let's just see. Which you can, it won't run, but what is it? 250 minimum. Oh, so somebody did. So 250, 3 grams. There's nothing to be had in here for 3 grams. Now, so we're just gonna call that good. I don't know, do you really want to measure the wrist pin now? No, I'm not measuring any of that crap because none of it matters. Now we're going to take the crank out. Okay, we got the crank out. Modification to the crankshaft of any kind will not be permitted. And if we do a visual inspection, I can see that it's not really been messed with. You would see it if I was going to do something, I'd drill into the end of this and plug the heaviest metal in there and make that sucker heavy. But you can't, you know. That's just me dreaming, you know. If they had an unlimited class, you could do that. But anyway, the heavier the crank, the more momentum this engine's going to make. So 1475, a lot of these come in at, let's see what it is. There's a 1375. Wow, that sucker's light. 13. That's really light. See, again, one of those things that makes me go, ah. Now let me get another crank. I don't see the weight in here anymore. There was never a weight in there. Oh, okay. So it's really a non-tech. It's just for you guys at home. 1337. 1478. Ooh, I'll take that one. I'll take it too. I think we've had 1485 before, haven't we? 1496. So anyways, my theory is, and there's no way to quantify it except for my track experience, this crank at 1478 is a beast. Once you get this up to full speed, it's going to be carrying momentum. There's nothing that's going to slow it down. You could even lift a little bit and get back in it, and it's not going to slow down. Now this crank is like 150 grams lighter.
Let's see how much that is.
Now let's see what 150 grams is. That's 95. It's 117. 139. What do we say, 150? 165, we're close. So that other crank has that much more weight to it. And if you want to quantify it, okay, when this is spinning, it probably don't make no never mind at 3,000 RPM, but at 6,000 RPM, now you're building momentum. So, but you can't, and you could buy 10 cranks, but they're not available for a UT3. Well, how about we buy 10 motors and we find the heaviest flywheel and the heaviest crank and build us a monster? Well, I'll take it.
Well, who does that? Nobody, right?
The only one that could do that is an engine builder that's
Yep.
going through 10 or 20 engines and building them. And then they save the favorite for the person that cries the hardest, and that's where, you know, you got to do your homework by yourself. So, really in that, what else do we got to touch on? Does anybody online have any questions?
Crank end play.
Okay, we'll do the crank end play, which I know it's going to be, it had no end play. Does anybody online have any questions? We'll do like a few minutes of questions. So this is 351, the minimum is 340. That would give us a little more end play in the engine, but I hate to say it, I wouldn't even want to use this crank. It's so light that, you know, you're not going to keep up with the leader. Do we have any questions online, Eric?
I don't see anything right off the bat. I think we answered them all as we were going.
Okay.
I did a fairly decent job of answering questions while you were going along.
Okay. So we could measure the bore, how wide it is, but it don't matter. It's 0.006 they give you there. There's really nothing more. The big things, we've discussed them, and if you find them, if you work on those things, but again, okay, I want to reiterate this about tech. Okay, we've been at this for how long now?
We are at the 5-hour mark.
5 hours. So, but in reality, we found more in the first hour than we found in the other 3 hours going on a witch hunt. And the thing is, I can only say to you tech guys out there, if you stick to the basics, that's where you're going to catch somebody in the dragnet. And the thing is, you know what? What I didn't like about quarter midgets, as soon as somebody, the tech guy, found something, they'd be like, aha! Okay, that ain't right. You know, accidents happen, mistakes happen. You know, people are all human. They're trying to do the best they can. Now, if you find a lightweight piston in there, yeah, you know somebody's been in there. But if you find the wrong carburetor on there, to me, that's more of a warning. I mean, it's a DQ, but I mean, they go on the internet and they go, aha, he's off, you know, 1,000th on piston pop-up. That ain't enough to mean anything.
Find that crane cam in there.
And if you find, you know, one of these crankshafts that's all drilled and somebody added heavy metal to it, you know, that's blatantly cheating. But, you know, don't go on a witch hunt. Look, you know, as a tech guy, I was more helpful than I was trying to go on a witch hunt to get people on the right track if they were off the track. So anyways,
Be careful what you buy in used motors. You never know what's in there.
Yeah, be careful what you buy in a used motor. You know, when I sell one, I give you the spec sheet with everything that we went over today. And but again, I'm not a professional full-time engine builder. We do this for fun. So I hope you guys had a great day. And again, Crybaby Performance, this is how we try. So if you want to try, try. If you don't, you can be the ones that cry.
Real quick, inline tube, is that where we're going to be able to find these, the orange?
The orange tack tools we will put on Crybaby when we get some more of those made. And just stay tuned to Crybaby. We're doing videos all the time. And maybe we can help you out in one way, shape, or form. Okay, so we're going to sign off for the day. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you had a good day.